staring endlessly at white. Wednesday, December 21st, 1983.
Ice and rain cover roads, interrupt power. Cloudy and colder tonight with a 50% chance of light snow. Lows 20 to 24. Cloudy and cold tomorrow with a 20% chance of light snow. Highs 24 to 28.
This whole deadly weather crisis thing is starting to get old. Almost a week of being snowed in with very little to do except hibernate has given me a full-blown case of cabin fever. I don't just have the symptoms anymore. Now I have the disease. I'm lying here in bed, wrapped tightly in blankets and pretending to be a fire-breathing dragon. I am able to carry out that particular dragon illusion because the room is so cold that a thick cloud of fog appears whenever I exhale. I suspect that it's probably just as cold indoors as it is outside right now. Another wave of freezing rain has hit and shut off power to an even wider area than before. At 9:30 this morning the radio announced that electricity even went out at the hospital. I suppose they have backup generators there, but it is not at all encouraging to see how vulnerable even our most established institutions are to this sort of disaster. Christmas is so close and I'm getting worried we won't have electricity by then either. The guy who does the evening shift on KOTN is complaining that, at home, his side of the street is without electricity while the opposite side of the street has power. It ticked the announcer off because the neighbor in front of him has his Christmas lights on every night, flaunting his juice, while his house remained dark and cold. The announcer drops the subject and plays Curly Shuffle again.
When me and my friends go out in the town, we can't sit still, we can't sit down. We don't like to fight and we don't like to scuffle, but we dance all night doing the Curly Shuffle. Hey Mo, hey Mo, hey Mo, hey Mo. Well, yuck, 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 yuck.
It's a goofy sort of song about the Three Stooges that seems to have become quite popular somehow. This cold snap has turned into a bold and angry thing. I mean, it's pretty much standing up on the top of a mountain like King Kong and beating on its chest. As an example of our misery, the radio guy says that it was 27 degrees at 1:30 this morning. By 9:30 this morning, the temperature had plummeted to 17 degrees. That's darn cold. I keep hearing a chainsaw being used nearby in the neighborhood. A tree either fell onto someone's house or else it's blocking their driveway.
Never thought there wouldn't be no Santa Claus. But look what the storm just brought, thank God for kids.
The radio is playing Thank God for Kids by the Oak Ridge Boys for perhaps the 59th time in the past 20 minutes. Give it a rest already. I hear an ambulance in the distance. There have been numerous traffic accidents involving those foolish enough to venture out into this mess. Many trucks and cars have ended up flipped over into ditches or smashed headlong against telephone poles. I glance over to the coffee table in front of the television where Toby Crow's Atari still sits cold and unused. Richard Smith's MASH game remains in the slot where I was playing it last week before the storm struck us. I met Richard last month and he called me on Thanksgiving morning to ask if we could do some temporary trades on a few Atari games. I've traded Atari games with a lot of people over the past couple of years, so this was certainly nothing unusual. He came over to the house on a white 10-speed bike and went through my game collection. He picked out a couple of good titles, Star Master being one of them. I then followed him to his house to see what sort of selection of games he had. I wasn't exactly impressed, although he did have some unusual titles that I had not heard of. I grabbed MASH, since I am such a big fan of the show. I also picked out Final Approach, in which you land jets at an imaginary airport. I traveled back home, enjoying the bright morning sun and breeze along the way. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was on when I returned. But, since I needed to use the television to try out the new games, the parade was cut short. The television is sitting on a brown dresser which has a bad drawer on it. In the top drawer is a pair of ragged, red-handled pliers that we use to change the television channel. Just so you know. Okay, here's MASH. I don't have any electricity to actually start the game up, so you'll just have to imagine what it looks like. First, you have to rescue wounded soldiers on the battlefield. Then, you take the action to the operating room where you try to remove shrapnel from your patient. It's a lot like the board game Operation. No. It's exactly like the game Operation. Look at the frown on that poor guy. I guess that's a realistic depiction of the horrors of war. If I had a series of what look like residential streets running through my body that passed for a circulatory system, I don't believe I would be smiling either. If you fail in your mission, you are greeted by the words, "You lose, ferret face," printed across the screen. Yeah, just like the TV show. The Final Approach game looks like this. You have to align these lines and keep the planes from crashing into each other. I've got to wonder if Richard actually picked this game out himself or if someone gave it to him as a joke. I'm as bored as a bag of rocks right now.